Hello London, we are ready for your vote.
Hello, I'm Stephen Perkins, and this is Douze Pois, the Eurovision podcast from the team behind Binge Watch. It is Monday, 6th of January 2025, which means we are just 4 months and 1 week away from this year's Eurovision Song Contest in Basel, Switzerland. And a lot will be happening in that time as the competing nations all go about the extremely important business of choosing and revealing the artists and songs that they will be sending to this year's contest. As I'm sure you're aware, a couple of early bird countries have already made that decision, so I thought we'd start the year with a little roundup of everything that's happened so far. So, strap yourselves in because it's already been a bit of a bumpy ride. We were technically supposed to have our first confirmed entry on 27th November 2024, courtesy of the newly returned to Eurovision Montenegro, as that's when they held the final of Montesong 2024. However, as it turned out, things weren't quite that straightforward. Montenegro's national final was won by the palindromically pleasing Neon Neon with the song Clickbait, a slice of industrial leather-clad pop rock that, from what I could see, seemed to be quite a surprise winner for the people watching Montesong online, and one that people didn't really seem to have a lot of confidence in regarding its chances at Eurovision. Montesong uses a combined jury and televote scoring system, and Clickbait didn't top either one, but it finished second in both, and given the slight disparity between the two sets of results, that was enough to see it emerge on top overall. However, there was a plot twist in store. 4 days later, on 1st of December, Montenegrin broadcaster RTCG revealed that Clickbait had been performed at the Festival Culture Zabielo in June 2023, which placed the song's eligibility for Eurovision into question, as the contest rules state that entries cannot have been released commercially or publicly performed before 1st of September 2024. RTCG stated that they would be consulting with the EBU about whether Clickbait could still be their entry, and Neon Neon said that they had been unaware of this rule, and added rather humbly that they felt the size of the crowd at that performance wasn't large enough to influence the result of Montesong, but that they would respect whatever decision was reached by RTCG and the EBU. And then on 4th of December, they announced their withdrawal from the contest, stating that they wished to end the uncertainty. As a result, on the 8th of December, so a week after all of the controversy kicked off, RTCG announced that their new representative for Eurovision would be the runner-up of Montesong, Nina Zizic, with Dobrodošli, which is Montenegrin for welcome. Nina is no stranger to Eurovision, having previously represented Montenegro in the 2013 contest in Malmö as the vocalist on Igranka by Who See, which finished 12th in the first semi-final that year and failed to qualify for the grand final, so she'll be hoping for a better result this time. I think, on balance, Dobrodošli is probably the right choice for Montenegro. Clickbait didn't really feel like a song that would qualify, whereas I think Dobrodošli is in with a shot if it gets a favourable draw, if the field isn't too overly stacked with dramatic female-fronted ballads, and if Nina pulls the vocals off on the night. Now that does sound like a lot of ifs, and it is, but in my defence I feel like it is quite hard to assess anyone's chances in any real sense when we only have 2 confirmed entries so far. But Dobrodošli to me at least feels like the type of song that has qualified in the past, whereas Clickbait feels more like the sort of entry that gains a bit of attention for being slightly offbeat and gimmicky, but never quite cuts through enough to translate into actual votes from the viewers at home. Still, let's see if I'm right when May rolls around. Thankfully, things seem to have gone a lot more smoothly for the only other country to have confirmed their entry so far, Albania. The 63rd edition of Festivali I Kanjigas, the annual music competition which has been used to select the Albanian entry for Eurovision for the past 20 years, was held between the 19th and the 22nd of December last year, when most of us were frantically running around trying to finalise our Christmas prep. After 2 semi-finals and a nostalgia night, 15 acts competed in the grand final for the chance to represent Albania at Eurovision, with the victory ultimately going to Shkodra Elektronika with Germ, which is Albanian for fire. I'm a big fan of this one already, actually. I'm probably going to sound slightly self-contradictory after what I said about Clickbait, but this one feels offbeat in a really interesting and potentially dynamic way. It's a big, sweeping, modern, folk electronica number with powerful vocals and a talky bit in the middle, which I always love, and it feels like one of those performances where the germ of some really good staging is already there, so they just need to build on what they've already got. Albania do have a fairly patchy qualification record in recent years. They've missed out on the final roughly 50% of the time, but I think this could be a good year for them if they play their cards right. And speaking of Albania, last year's representative Basel, who failed to qualify for the final from the second semi with her song Titan, appears to be one of the many artists in the running to represent San Marino this year. We will cover the mammoth Sammarinese selection process in a bit more detail when the time comes in March, but there are a few other names of note on there. Teslenko, who was originally longlisted to participate in Vidbia, the Ukrainian selection process, this year, but withdrew from the competition before the wildcard vote was completed. And, of particular interest to people who were Pop Justice readers in the early 2000s, Alexis Strum, who wrote and recorded Nothing Good About This Goodbye, one of my all-time favourite songs, which later ended up on Rachel Stevens' extremely underrated second album, Come and Get It. So, that looks like it's going to be another very interesting competition, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more to come on that one in the coming months. We do also have a few more artists confirmed for the contest who haven't released their songs yet. In addition to the previously announced Theo Evan for Cyprus, we now also have Adonis for Czechia and Claude for the Netherlands. Adonis is a 29-year-old singer-songwriter originally from Slovakia who was the first openly queer winner of Superstar, the Czech and Slovak version of the Idol franchise. Claude, meanwhile, is 21 years old and originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo, before his family left for the Netherlands when he was 9. He has taken part in The Voice Kids and had a number one hit on the Dutch charts with La Da Da, Montenegro. So, both very exciting signings, and I'm hoping for absolute bangers from both of them. In other selection process news, Iceland have announced changes to the upcoming edition of Song Verketnin. Perhaps the most headline-grabbing one is the removal of the super final element, which pitches the top two songs against each other in one final vote. That can be problematic because it does give voters a chance to vote against a song winning rather than voting for a song they actually believe in, and it's thought to be the reason why frontrunner Bashar Murad with Wild West ended up losing to Hera Björk's Scared of Heights last year, only for the latter to end up finishing last in her semi-final at Eurovision. This year's Song Verketnin will consist of two semi-finals being held on Saturday the 8th and Saturday the 15th of February. There will be no wildcard qualifications, but 3 songs will advance from each round, meaning that 6 songs will compete in the final on February the 22nd for the chance to compete at Eurovision. And again, more news on that one a little bit nearer the time. Some sad news next, as Joe Grech, Malta's first ever Eurovision entrant, died on the 30th of December 2024 at the age of 90. He competed at the 1971 contest in Dublin with the song Maria il Maltia and finished in last place with a total of 52 points, but he was still a hugely popular figure in Malta, even making an appearance in Malta's national final in 2022 to perform Maria il Maltia to a rapturous reception from the audience. Finally, we've had a question submitted by a listener, which is a very exciting business. JDL messaged me on Blue Sky to ask whether, for the UK's 2025 entry, I'd like us to send a tried and trusted quote-unquote Eurovision song, i.e. not a normal BBC selection, or something that pushes the boundaries and could either win by a mile or completely crash and burn. I think that's a really interesting question, and one that's actually quite hard to answer. The UK, I think, is still getting to grips with what constitutes a Eurovision-style song in this day and age, and I'm not really sure that I trust us to make that call in the first place. I think, and this is true of many countries, not just the UK, that if you waste too much time trying to send a song that you think will do well at Eurovision, it tends to have a horrible habit of backfiring, because what you haven't done is send a song that you as a country value on its own merits and truly believe in, and that has a tendency to translate on stage, with the outcome being that the rest of Europe doesn't really get invested in it either, and so you don't get the votes. So, with that in mind, I think I would come down on the side of stepping outside the box, because I think Eurovision works best when you send a song that you feel proud of and excited about, even if it ends up flopping. Because, ultimately, there is always going to be a risk that whatever you send will end up finishing in last place on Saturday night, or even getting 0 points. And I think there's much less shame, at least from an artistic perspective, in finishing last with a song that you put your full weight behind, than in finishing last with a song that you submitted primarily as a box-checking exercise. So yeah, I would say swing for the fences every time. Thanks for the question, JDL, and I hope I answered it at least semi-coherently. That's all for this episode. Thank you so much, as always, for listening, and we are hopefully going to be here with new episodes pretty much weekly between now and May, barring any unforeseen dramatic events in my everyday life that might prevent that from happening. Please remember to rate and review us on your podcast platform of choice, and don't forget to subscribe to us and our sister podcast Binge Watch to make sure you don't miss any of our brilliant upcoming episodes. Until next time, good night Europe, and good morning Australia.